and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA Live. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup. Yes, we are live on Facebook this week for the first time, and it is our intention to do that in the coming weeks, Wednesdays at 2:30 p.m. But we're also taping the show, as we always do on Wednesday afternoon, to run it on its usual schedule. But for those of you seeing us at our normal time elsewhere, if you want to tune in Wednesdays at 2:30 p.m. on Facebook at Manhattan Neighborhood Network, MNN, that's where you will find us live.
You're going to be able to call in with your questions today and or comments. We are at 212-757-1393. And in just a moment, we're going to be speaking with Corey Johnson, the out gay Speaker of the New York City Council. But first, the headlines. Now, you know, we're all vulnerable to the coronavirus, but it does seem to be hitting the Lgbt community particularly hard.
The virus has claimed the life of our greatest living playwright, Terrence McNally.
And also dying this week were LGBT legal activist Richard Weber and drag artist Nashom Wooden.
Andy Cohen of Bravo has tested positive, as has the out gay mayor of West Hollywood.
Now, Gilead says there's no danger of a shortage of their HIV drugs for now.
And we do have other news. That's really why we're here week after week, because there's a lot of news that gets lost in the reporting on the coronavirus, important news. And one of those stories this week is that a trans woman was shot dead in North Carolina, I think.
Charlotte, yes.
While EMS workers were trying to take her away in an ambulance.
A Polish actor has come out at age 100.
And another European nation is set to have marriage equality this summer. By the way, I am wearing latex gloves just in an abundance of caution, because I'm in a studio that's not my home, and if I touch any surfaces, I want to make sure that I'm protected from that.
I cleaned this surface with wipes. Ann and I are sitting farther apart. But look, we now want to turn to Corey Johnson, who is on the phone with us, the out gay, out HIV positive as well, Speaker of the New York City Council. Welcome, Corey.
Thanks, Ann. Thanks, Andy. I hope you guys are staying safe during these scary times.
We're doing our best, and you, of course, are a longtime member of the Gay USA family as an occasional co-host of this show, Corey. We're very grateful to have you join us today.
And I know before the show you were saying you two shouldn't be out. I do feel safer doing this. We don't take the subway. We walk here on basically empty streets, and the studio is almost entirely empty because the public is barred from here.
But we may stay home and do it by Skype next week.
Anyway.
All right. So, Corey, first I want to know how you are. Tell us how you are someone living with HIV, but you're young and strong and an ex-football player. So how is your health these days as you spend about 90 hours a day dealing with this crisis?
I'm doing okay. You know, I haven't gotten sick, which I'm grateful for, given we're seeing so many people struggle, not just folks that are dying, but also folks that are in critical care and have loved ones who are getting sick. I'm very lucky. I've been staying at my boyfriend's apartment in Brooklyn with his dog and my cat, and we've been practicing social distancing. I maybe go out once a day and go for a walk for about a half hour just to get some air, but we haven't had contact with anyone. And you know, being someone who's living with HIV, I think it's important to talk about the fact that we want folks to stay safe. If you have a well-controlled viral load, if you're undetectable, you aren't in the standalone category that have been laid out by public health professionals of being at a higher risk. So it's really important that folks stay on their HIV drug regimen to keep their viral load low, and I, of course, have been doing that.
And those who should be tested for HIV should be tested to get on treatment so that they can control their viral load and be safer.
That's right. Though right now it's very difficult with the healthcare system in New York City that is getting overrun by COVID-19 cases. I know this is a national show, so if you are in a place across the country where it is still safe to go out and go to a healthcare setting to check on your status, do that, but check with your public health professionals wherever you live on what their guidance is on staying home and on social distancing.
So we are hearing predictions of a real horror show to come, of a tsunami of coronavirus cases heading for New York. What is your personal assessment of that?
Well, we're already seeing it. We're already seeing hospitals that are getting overrun here in New York City. The hardest hit hospital right now, my understanding, is Elmhurst Hospital, which is one of our public hospitals in Western Queens. But I think that is really just a sign of what's to come for almost all of our hospitals here in the largest city in the United States of America. And one of the things that I'm most worried about is we have basically three things going on at once. The first is we need to halt transmission, and that is why you've been seeing this pause order from the governor telling people to stay home and socially distance. Number two, every single day we're trying to increase hospital capacity to have more beds, more ICU beds. We need more personal protective equipment for healthcare workers and nurses and doctors and folks that are in the hospital setting. We need more ventilators. So those two things are going on at once. And then the third thing, which is affecting everyone, is the folks that are now much more economically ruined because of the pause order that's been put in place. You've seen a lot of talk out of Washington about big corporations. We need to make sure that any bill that passes is going to help gig economy workers and freelancers and domestic workers and small business owners and folks that don't typically qualify for unemployment insurance benefits. You have those three things: halt transmission, increase hospital capacity and personal protective equipment stockpiles, and delivering cash assistance and money to folks that are in a much more economically precarious situation overnight.
And of course, the healthcare workers, are on the front lines. I mean, it's absolutely courageous. It's unbelievable, and it's outrageous that they don't have what they need. What about the grocery store workers? Who are checking out our food? That's the one, or the pharmacy workers. These are one of the few places that we can go. But how about protecting those people as well? Is there a plan?
I mean, that is what is so shameful about the situation that we're in, that you have not seen the president fully invoke the Defense Production Act to ramp up the supplies necessary in personal protective equipment. And because we already have a shortage here in New York City, we have been prioritizing that equipment for people that are in a hospital setting where they know they're dealing with COVID-19 patients, though we should have enough equipment to protect everyone. And I think the one point to make is we really want to, of course, as you just did, Andy, give our thanks to these healthcare workers that are on the front lines and are so courageous doing this work every single day away from their families and loved ones. But when you look at these essential workers, the essential workers are now the pharmacists and the grocery store workers and the folks that are working in schools and the janitors and all of these people that don't get their due day in and day out are now really saving lives on a daily basis. We want to give them gratitude. We want to give them thanks. Our firefighters, our police officers, all of them. But at the same time, we also want to make sure that we're ramping up production enough to cover everyone who is on the front lines and needs a mask and needs gloves and needs the equipment to stay safe.
I understand that 10% of the police force now has been diagnosed with the virus.
I don't know if that's the exact number, but we know it is a significant number. And again, it shows why it is so important to stay home, to halt transmission, and to get these folks the gear and the equipment that they need to protect themselves.
Now, what about homeless LGBT youth? Homeless people in general, of course, all of them. Shelters are closing. They wouldn't be great places to be in as people packed into rooms anyway. But what about the homeless and specifically homeless LGBT youth?
I saw today that it was announced by the Department of Homeless Services in New York City that the first homeless person has died from coronavirus. But I have been very concerned about homeless shelters. I've been concerned about Rikers Island, where we're seeing a major outbreak of incarcerated folks, and we need to release more people from Rikers Island. There's a lot of folks that are there that are older, that have compromised immune systems, that are there on technical parole violations or other parole violations, and we need to get people off the island. As it relates to LGBT people and homeless LGBT people, you know, it's scary because in so many of these shelters that are set up outside of a pandemic situation, they don't allow for the social distancing and isolation that you need. You have people that are sleeping in very close quarters, eating in very close quarters, showering in very close quarters. And so the Department of Homeless Services have been trying to set up shelters that are just for people that may have been exposed or may have mild symptoms to keep them away from everyone else. They've been identifying places to do that. If you are someone that is watching and you have concerns, you should contact 311 here in New York City to get information about how to best protect yourself if you are currently homeless New Yorker.
Now, Corey, you talk to people, government officials all over the country. Is there anybody in the White House that can get Trump off the nonsense that he's talking about now, so that we can get a more unified national message of distancing, lest we be doomed?
And urgent production of
yes.
more ventilators?
I mean, I know that the governor and the mayor have been speaking to the president and the vice president on a near daily basis, but his press conferences are dangerous in
yes.
so many ways, and I am glad that some of the media have said they're not going to air them anymore because he is giving out misinformation and potentially endangering more people. Not potentially, he is endangering more people. It's really important in a moment of crisis to level with people, to set expectations accordingly, to talk about opening
Reggie.
things up around
Reggie
Easter is the height of irresponsibility. We need people to stay home. And what folks are seeing in New York is really the canary in the coal mine, because we know that this virus sees no borders. And so we may be hitting hardest the first, but what you're seeing in New York City could be coming to any place around the country, which means that these other places need to take the measures earlier than we took the measures. They need to start building up their hospital capacity, and they need to be planning for a worst-case scenario. And so if you have the president who is giving out misinformation, who is downplaying things on a daily basis, it is frightening. I do think that they've given us a small amount. We saw yesterday they announced 4,000 ventilators for New York State, 2,000 going to New York City, 2,000 going to the rest of the state. The need we have right now is really 40,000 ventilators for the state of New York, and we only have a fraction of that. The same thing as it relates to N95 masks, surgical masks, face shields, gowns, gloves. So we need to ramp up production. There was a good call yesterday, I believe, with the CEO of a company called 3M, which is based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, and they have been the manufacturers of a lot of this personal protective equipment, and they supposedly are going to be sending a huge cachet of this PPE to New York City and to New York State. But we shouldn't be doing this in an ad hoc way. The federal government and the White House should be requiring manufacturers to start manufacturing these products. They should have done it weeks ago, and they need to do it today to help the hardest hit places. Right now, New York City has 5% of the cases around the globe, and I believe we have a huge percentage of what's happening in the country. We are now the epicenter of what's happening in the United States of America, and we can't be doing this in an ad hoc way. We need seamless coordination and support from the federal government.
So contact your senators and your Congress members and make them do the right thing.
Corey, one more thing from me. I have been, frankly, horrified at the ongoing partying of particularly the gay male community. I would like to think that has stopped now, but on the off chance that it hasn't everywhere, can you, as someone who I think is a very powerful role model, talk just for a second about things like the winter party, the bars that were packed until very recently, and give a direct message to gay men?
The most important thing that anyone can do right now, unless you're a healthcare worker or someone who's working at a pharmacy or a grocery store or is deemed an essential worker, the most important thing you can do is to stay home. If you stay home, you will help us halt transmission, which will ease off the hospital system a little bit. We know that the peak hasn't even come yet, and so we need to keep halting transmission to make it easier in the days and weeks ahead. I have the same concerns. You have seen, particularly amongst a lot of young people, them not understanding the gravity and the seriousness of this. And so even though in New York, I think we're seeing pretty broad compliance right now, anywhere across the country, even if you haven't been put under direct order by your governor, by your mayor, and you have the president saying irresponsible things, you yourself can make a difference in this epidemic, in this pandemic. You can stay home, you can socially distance, you can do those things. You should not be going to bars or restaurants or parties or barbecues or gyms. You should be really taking this seriously because you can save a life or lives right now.
Well, thank you very much, Corey, for all you're doing. Keep us posted, and we'll keep our viewers posted, and we thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Stay safe, Andy and Ann. I love you guys.
Love
Please
you
be
too.
safe.
Love you too, and you stay safe.
We want to get you back here at this table someday.
Yes.
Thanks a lot.
Stay safe, Corey.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow.
Well, there we are. And not going out to those places also means don't do Grindr hookups either. Those aren't safe.
Well, just do it on the phone.
Yes, mutual masturbation is delightful.
People are doing that. People are doing that. There are ways in a crisis. Well, we turned from that to the people that we're starting to lose in the community.
Yeah.
And the one that hit me the hardest was Terrence McNally, who was, until yesterday, our greatest living playwright. Died at the age of 81 of complications from the coronavirus. That's him with his husband, Tom Curtahy, was also a great producer in his own right, The Inheritance, Hadestown. But Terrence had an underlying condition, for sure. He had pulmonary disease. He was a cancer survivor.
Lung cancer survivor.
He was walking around with, oxygen for a long time. But my God, what a great, 4 Tony Awards for love, valor, compassion. He always did a lot of gay stuff throughout his entire career, starting in the early 1960s when nobody was out. He was dating Edward Albee in those days. They went out for about 4 years, and Albee wasn't willing to be as open as he was, so that kind of broke up the relationship. But he also won for Masterclass, Ragtime the Musical, Kiss of the Spider Woman.
And he won a Lifetime Achievement Tony just last year. I remember taking my youngest straight brother to see the Ritz.
Now, the Ritz, 1975 on Broadway,
yes.
a gay bathhouse farce with the mob involved.
Yeah, my brother was a little.
The critics were kind of appalled in the beginning.
Yes.
His first play on Broadway was when he was 25 years old in 1965.
He lost,
and it had a gay character.
He lost 2 lovers to AIDS along the way. One of whom, Gary Buonasorte, I knew quite well,
and Robert Drivus, who was in one of his plays.
Yeah. And Terrence was an extremely gentle and nice guy.
Oh yeah.
And he told a great story about how he was at a party once many years ago, and Angela Lansbury called him over, who he didn't know very well, and she just said to him, every time I see you, you're drunk, and you have got to stop drinking. And he did, and he took that very seriously.
Tom Viola, Broadway Cares, said he was a founding father of Broadway Cares, Terrence was, and Terrence believed that the most important function of theater is to create community. I'm going to start crying talking about this because I'm thinking of what we're all going through. I'm sorry. But
don't apologize, Andy. It's very tough to take, especially with someone who you knew and who was an enormously important and meaningful person.
Well, I'm remembering Corpus Christi, which was his most controversial play. He was raised in Corpus Christi, Texas, a gay boy in Texas. And he wrote a play about Jesus Christ set in modern-day Texas with Jesus and the apostles as a group of gay men. And it was so controversial that the theater wanted to close it, said it's not safe to do this.
Yes.
And a lot of playwrights said, if you close this show, we're never going to write for the Manhattan Theater Club again. And they relented. We went through metal detectors to get in. There were huge demonstrations outside about this little play, which was just a very gentle play about Jesus.
And he wrote, as you said, plays about the AIDS epidemic that were heartbreaking. He had foresight. He had courage. He didn't let anyone stop him from doing a play like Corpus Christi.
He said, write plays that matter. He said, we do that by speaking from the heart about things that matter most to us. If a play isn't worth dying for, maybe it isn't worth writing.
He died in Sarasota, Florida. I don't know where he got the virus, and I don't know if he's one of those who got it here and then went there, or if he'd been there for a while or whatever, but that is where he
was
died.
Working right up towards the end. I mean, he wrote the book for Anastasia on Broadway in 2017. He worked with Liza and Cheetah and The Rink. I mean, he wrote that. I mean, just 36 or more works. He also wrote librettos, operas, plays about opera.
Terrence's picture is in the dictionary next to prolific.
And Nathan Lane said, if it weren't for Terrence, I wouldn't have had a career, because he was in those gay plays, Lips Together, Teeth Apart, Lisbon Traviata, and of course, Love, Valor, Compassion. And we are going to include in our email this week, there's the cast of Love, Valor, Compassion. Joe Mantello was the director. Nathan was in it. John Glover won a Tony for it for Best Supporting Actor. John Benjamin Hickey was in it. A group of gay men in 1992. During the height of the AIDS crisis, he writes this play, and it's hilarious and heartbreaking. And we're going to include a clip from the Broadway production in our email this week. So go to gayusatv.org, sign up for our email. You could also Google this and probably find it, but we like to send things like that as well.
We'll also include a trailer from a PBS show that was done about him, that, and you may be able to find the whole PBS show online, actually, because a lot of their productions are online.
Right. Okay.
So Terrence is a huge loss. Also, a huge loss is Richard Weber. He was a lawyer who was a longtime member of the board of Legal, the lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans...
LGBT Bar Association of Greater New York.
Yeah. He was particularly involved in administering their free legal clinics, and again, another beloved figure.
Survived by his partner, Antonio.
He was 57, which is considerably younger.
And he founded this legal clinic that offers free legal services to the community. You can call them at 212-353-9118 if you want to get some service.
Also dead of the coronavirus, Nashom Wooden, who was a performer at Wigstock 2018 as Mona Foote.
Very quick-witted diva, worked at the Boy Bar up until a couple of years ago on St. Mark's Place. Michael Musto called him, and he used male pronouns, a club maker and a scene stealer. A legendary lip syncer to Aretha Franklin, did Wonder Woman at Union Square, became oppressed by being Mona and said, I just wanted to perform, and that's why I did it, but we're sad to lose Nashom.
And then day after day, we're hearing about people who have acquired the virus, who are living with it now, and who have announced publicly that they have it as a warning to others to take this seriously and to stay home. And the most shocking to me came out very early on is Andy Cohen of Bravo.
Tested positive on March 20th, is trying to get better at home, but needed medical care. He was just about to launch a talk show from his home called Watch What Happens Live. But
I don't think he's doing that sick. And, of course, I'm concerned about his very young child, Benjamin.
Right. And then there's the mayor of West Hollywood, John D'Amico. All the staff had to leave, and city buildings were shut to the public and non-essential staff. They're going to sterilize everything. But D'Amico is 57, gay and HIV positive. No evidence that, again, that HIV positive people are on retrovirals have a greater risk of this.
And these are people who are still alive. These are people who are now living with the virus, who we hope will recover in short order, as they say 80% of people will. But it's scary stuff to have it. And a major AIDS researcher, Dr. Michael Sagg, 64 years old, also has the virus. He is at the University of Alabama in Birmingham. He thinks he got it on a family trip to New York City and, of course, went back to Birmingham and now has discovered he has the virus. He's a major HIV/AIDS researcher there.
And then there is David Latt, who was an out gay founder of the legal blog Above the Law and a widely recognized legal recruiter, in critical condition and on a respirator after his oxygen levels dropped. His husband, Zachary Shemtab, says they're just taking it day by day. He has a mild form of asthma, but he's also a marathon runner. So, he's not in bad shape. He has a husband and child that can't visit. He has 47,000 Twitter followers and is educating them about what's going on.
And a couple of actors. Aaron Tveit has announced he has the virus.
Broadway actor, yes. Next to Normal, among other things. Oh, actually, he was in, I believe he was in, come on, it'll come to me, Moulin Rouge.
Yes, definitely, Moulin Rouge. And Daniel Day Kim also has announced that he has the virus. So we're hearing more and more of these stories every day. This is very real, especially in New York, but everywhere. And please heed Corey's warning. Stay home and protect yourself and those around you.
And it's great that, Rosie O'Donnell did a virtual benefit for the Actors Fund this week, an online show, reviving her show with all the stars and letting them sing. It raised $500,000. Broadway Cares is pushing to raise another $1 million for people in the entertainment industry who are being hurt. The
productions of the Pose cast and crew have, because they use hospital settings for a lot of their episodes, they have donated all the equipment from those sets, because it's real hospital equipment, to the hospitals, as have a lot of NBC and ABC medical and fire department dramas. But Pose certainly has done that. A number of things, we were following whether HIV drugs, protease inhibitors in particular, Kaletra and others, might be therapeutic against this virus. The latest...
I want you to explain that to people, but I have to leave the set for a second.
Okay.
I just do. So you talk to people, I'll be right back.
I will fill in while Andy is gone. The latest news from AMFAR is that these drugs are not useful against the coronavirus. And that, of course, is a real shame, because we're grabbing onto any piece of hope we can find these days. We have also heard that intravenous vitamin C is being useful against the virus, and there are other drugs that they're investigating. But Kaletra and the other protease inhibitors, they're still studying, but they have not found any great help from them. And of course, this is important because the stupid president got up and started touting this chloroquine, the malaria drug, and promptly killed a guy who took him at his word. So please be careful about any kind of home remedies or attempts to treat yourself with unapproved drugs, because that is just not working. Now, I have been asked a lot, and I've been asked to do interviews lately about comparing the HIV epidemic to this epidemic and the government reaction and the community reaction. And I find myself both agreeing with some of the comparisons and fighting them. It certainly took a little while for this government, our government, to react to this virus and the real threat. But of course, nothing like with HIV, which it took years for the president to talk about. And when you think about what would have happened in this epidemic if it had taken years for the government to respond, even badly as they are responding, you can only imagine the devastation. Well, now, 40 years after we have become aware of HIV in the population, we have 32 million dead and 35 million still living with HIV around the world. We have not found a vaccine to stop it. We have not found a cure. 2 people in the world have been cured with very difficult bone marrow transplants that cannot be replicated easily. So as people think, oh, we'll have a vaccine for this soon, or we'll have treatments for this soon, I certainly hope so, but let's not be unrealistic about this. Now, the other thing that struck me last night as I was thinking about HIV versus the coronavirus is one of the great necessities in the HIV epidemic was to teach people that HIV was not easily transmitted and that we should not be afraid to touch people with HIV and be affectionate with them and hug them. And we have the exact opposite here. This is easily transmitted, and we are teaching people to stay away from each other. And that is, it's tragic that we cannot touch each other in the ways we need to be touched. But when people want me to compare HIV to coronavirus, those are the kinds of things I think about.
Well, the great parallel is this. HIV was not dealt with by this country for years.
I have made that point just while you ran away.
But this wasn't dealt with for months. But that was enough to let it get out around the world.
I would submit we're still not dealing with HIV in the ways we should. We're still not doing the sex education in schools. We're still, people are, tens of thousands of people are still getting infected every year.
Yes, you want to talk about pandemics. I mean, HIV killed 35 million people worldwide, and there are 35 million more people today living with HIV.
Now, I have to say that one thing that disturbs me in this current epidemic is the attempts at humor. I have completely lost any sense of humor about this. It's far too serious and depressing and scary to me. So when I get sent coronavirus jokes or cartoons, I just sit there and think, what is wrong with you people? Why are you doing this?
Well, when people are very uncomfortable and terrified, actually,
yes,
they try to deflect it sometimes. I think that's what happens.
Well,
but please don't do it.
And the other thing that has occurred to me is, we have a military in this country to protect us from foreign invaders or wars or whatever we need. And we don't have a medical military in this country. And as we learn, as we read about this and watch what's happening, this is just the first wave.
Sure.
There will be other viruses.
Sure.
We are not prepared on a daily basis to deal with an emergency like this.
They call it a novel virus because it's new. And no one has ever had it before. And that's why it is hurting so many people. It's not even a living thing. It just gets in your system, multiplies like crazy, and does its damage.
Its impulse is to live and multiply.
Right.
And that's why, and it's a smart one, Ebola was not so smart because it made people
die quickly.
Exactly, and that killed it too.
Right.
So when you could isolate the people who had it, you could control the virus. This one is not so fatal.
And the
to
real
everybody.
danger is all the people who are feeling fine, who don't know that they have it. We're not testing people who don't have any symptoms, although we need to eventually. Now we can't do it because we don't have enough equipment to test for the doctors doctors and nurses to wear in order to test you.
Yeah.
So we have to get that done before, if we're really going to track it.
And the other thing that drives me crazy are the conspiracy theories. Oh, it was made in a lab somewhere. Oh, this is China's conspiracy to get America. Oh, this is a conspiracy to get Trump reelected.
Well,
this is a conspiracy to not get Trump reelected.
But I have to say, once that thing started happening in China, and was breaking loose there, every public health expert in the world had to know it was going to get around, and we didn't move on it then. Nobody did. Certainly Trump didn't. I mean, other than to say no planes from China, which is wishful thinking, which, again, it certainly might have stopped some cases from coming in, but, it didn't stop it from moving around the world. And I think a lot of that is racism. But again, everybody's going to have to ramp up in the future. Governments, everybody, local government, to develop these public health things. We don't need a military fighting wars in the Middle East. We need this here.
We need a ramped up medical situation that can deal with things like this, and scientific.
You and I grew up in the 50s. I mean, when they had all these fallout shelters, which you can still see signs about here, there, and everywhere, and that was preparation for what we thought was going to be a nuclear war. We lived in a little bit of terror growing up about that. Well, all right. But, we had to get under our desks sometimes in schools to protect ourselves.
And we had to have polio vaccines or that kind of stuff.
But they did put some things in place, and that's what we just never do that in this country.
Right.
All right.
Well, this 35 Minutes has been the kind of program that I don't watch anymore because it's too scary for me, and I watch Will and Grace marathons or Hallmark Christmas movies or whatever the heck I can find that is going to take me away from this.
I watch a lot of Turner Classic movies.
Well, I've seen all of those, so
you're surprised.
No, I wouldn't, because I go through the guide to see what's on. I pick out a few here and there, but anyway, the point is that there are other things happening in the world, and so let's turn to.
Well, are we totally done with this? I mean,
what else you got?
Did you talk about Liberty University?
No.
They told everybody to go back to class until the state of Virginia stopped them, and now they're still having people back on campus. That crazy anti-LGBT Cardinal Burke from the Catholic Church said you should still go to church, just distance yourself from the church. He's as mad as he blamed the pandemic on the evil of sexual and gender identity equality. Marco Rubio told anti-LGBT churches on the phone with a call about the relief funds, "Oh, don't worry, you can get them." Okay.
Well, what, are you going to cut off funding to churches to places because they're? Go ahead. We're in an emergency.
I don't. Certainly for any kind of an emergency thing, we're talking about funds that they want, because they're missing funds.
So it's not a Corona story. Okay. I thought we were still doing
All
this.
Right. Well, let's see here. And in case you haven't heard, Trump axed the CDC's expert in China on this back in July.
Yes.
July, because we just weren't interested in what was going on in the rest of the world. We also heard from a viewer, an older viewer, 73 years old, with a serious lung condition, and she said, her name is Kate. She said, I'm not ill at the present, but I've notified my providers that I don't want to take up room that could be, because I'm not going to probably do well if I get this. I don't want to die, but I don't want to take up room on respirators and other things that could help people who might benefit from it. Of course, I think a lot of these decisions are going to be not made by us, but for us, depending on how all this goes. I don't mean to scare you.
It's a little too close to Dan Patrick, the Lieutenant Governor of Texas, who said, old people should volunteer to check out so that the economy can be saved.
Well, that's a whole other story.
Well, I have to quote Governor Andrew Cuomo, who has never been my favorite, but when he said, "My mother is not expendable," I had to applaud that statement.
And his mother is not expendable, but there are a lot of decisions that are going to have to be made in the coming weeks. And again, I'm not trying to scare people, but people are going to be at various levels with this thing, and you saw what happened in Italy already.
Yes, and I'm getting my affairs in order and have signed a living will.
We sat here signing wills and documents
witnessing
and all
each
that
other's documents.
You can do a will. please.
Yeah.
All you have to do a will is write out
Healthcare proxy.
write out what your intentions are, where you want it to go, and sign it in the presence of 2 witnesses. 2 witnesses. I mean, you can look it up online, but you don't, I mean, at this point, don't worry about getting a lawyer. Just get your affairs in order.
All right. Can we move on to other stuff?
And as we mentioned, Gilead, do we talk about that?
No.
Is saying that their global supply chain for, for HIV drugs, for the foreseeable future, they don't expect any shortages. Some clinical studies have been paused, but by the way, scientists have identified 69 drugs to test against the coronavirus.
And 120 LGBT pride events have been postponed or canceled around the world. If you want that list, you can go to interpride.org.
And remember, we didn't identify the HIV virus for about 3 to 3.5 years into the pandemic.
Yes, or a test.
We didn't even know it was a virus.
Right.
We had an idea maybe, but this virus has been mapped by the Chinese almost immediately, and that is how they're going to get into it.
And I think we can credit HIV with a lot of that work, because we became a lot smarter about doing that kind of stuff 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Of course, the right wing likes to prosecute people with HIV who might give it to someone else, or and the DOJ, the Department of Justice, now says if you intentionally spread the coronavirus, you can be charged with bioterrorism. And I think they ought to look right into the White House and see what Trump is doing, because I mean, I really am terrified by every time I see him on the screen and what he does. It is terrifying people, because not terrifying people because he's not scaring people, it's because he's not doing anything.
Okay, well, we do not have an infinite amount of time,
all right.
So let's do other things. Lambda Legal Defense is suing the Department of Health and Human Services in the Trump administration on behalf of SAGE, Family Equality, and the True Colors United group against their notice of non-enforcement that they put out that said they would not enforce non-discrimination laws that protect us in federally funded programs and organizations, because they would rather look at religious freedom, whatever that may be, than follow non-discrimination laws. So Lambda Legal and these organizations are suing.
And the Council for Global Equality has had to condemn our U.S. State Department. Our State Department, under Republican and Democratic administrations, did an annual country human rights report, which really put everything in there. Even in the Republican administrations, you heard about some anti-LGBT stuff that was happening. Well, now they say it's just a perfunctory exercise. It's sterile, has no impact. The United States, the country that doesn't care.
They don't talk about Bolsonaro as a homophobe in Brazil. They don't talk about what's going on in Poland or Egypt. They talk about Chechnya, but not about Putin. It's a disgrace.
They don't talk about what Bloomberg did this week. Well, he said he would keep his campaign staff right through November. No matter who the candidate is, I'm keeping them all on staff, and we're going to win. And he is totally reneged on that now.
And 4 of his ex-employees are suing and saying, you promised us jobs, you promised us health insurance, all that is gone. You've given...
we gave you credit for it, and here you are. But he is keeping some people on in 6 battleground states. You should know what they are: Arizona, Florida, Michigan, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin.
Because we are live on Facebook on Wednesday afternoon, we have opened up phone lines, and we have Frank calling in. Frank, what's on your mind?
I was the transgender individual who was in the ambulance. Why did they mass survive?
Yeah, we're going to get to that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And the Biden campaign, in better news, has appointed an LGBTQ liaison, Reggie Greer. He worked in the Obama White House. He's been working lately at the Victory Fund, helping.
He's young and African American.
Yes.
You got his picture there?
Yeah, he's the one in the plaid shirt.
Reggie Greer.
Reggie Greer. You want to stick that up?
Yeah.
All right. Well,
there he
is.
Hi,
There's
Reggie.
So welcome to the campaign, Reggie, and we hope that he is helpful to Biden. And You know, we certainly hear a lot of stuff these days about, are people going to vote? Are the young people going to vote? Are the Bernie supporters going to vote? We know that Biden has not won the nomination yet.
Are we going to have an election?
Yeah, that too. Or a convention or primaries or any of that.
Yeah.
Please don't
Vote
forget.
by mail, urge your senators. And
you see the monster getting up and giving these press conferences. Do you want to see 4 more years of that?
Well, I mean, his term ends if they don't have an election, his term ends. I think that the Speaker of the House would become the president. But, I'm serious, but...
I know you are.
There's another way to elect electors. The state legislatures can just meet and say, this is who we're voting for president.
Yes. Do you know who controls the state legislatures?
Yes, I know, and
these
that's
days?
why I'm worried.
Republicans.
All right.
All right.
Fill out your census form. If you got nothing else to do, fill out your census form.
And our caller Frank was referring to this next story. In Charlotte, North Carolina, a trans woman, Monica Diamond, 34 years old, there was a fight going on, and
she must have been hurt because they got an ambulance for her.
So they put her in the ambulance, and
there she is.
She asks for some guy to come along with her, and the ambulance people reject him, and he comes back with a gun and kills her in the ambulance.
His name is Prentice Bess, and he has, of course, been arrested. She was a businesswoman. She was the joint chief executive of a pageant that pays tribute to LGBT moms. Wow.
And was helpful to the community there in Charlotte for years, beloved, and this is just an astonishingly horrible story.
The Detroit Archdiocese took time out from the crisis to ban the LGBT Catholic group Dignity from meeting in Catholic spaces.
Oh,
of
for
course,
God's sake.
No one can meet in any spaces these days. But you know, Dignity is calling on the Pope to do something about these horrible people. It's awful.
All right, so we do have the capacity for call-in. So if you have a comment or a question, you can call us now at 212-757-1393, and we will be happy to take your call.
How about some good news? In Covington, Kentucky, it's the first town in the state to ban conversion therapy for under 18s.
Yippee. All right, can we
And
move?
Greenville, South Carolina voted to nullify.
That's an old story, and we've
All right, more
talked
was up
about
in the
that.
news. Okay,
Yeah.
international?
Yes. All right.
Alex Davies?
Yes.
Well, in the United Kingdom, we told you about a guy named Alex Davies, 18, who was brutally murdered last April, stabbed over 100 times by another teen, Brian Heelless, in Lancashire. They connected on Grindr. Heelless was convicted of the murder, and the jury was shown evidence that he was preparing for another victim. The defense argued that he was a paranoid schizophrenic. The judge called him a calculating, cunning, manipulative young man. We had a picture of Alex up there because it's a very sad story.
And we also mourn the death of a very famous musician, Gabby Delgado Lopes, in Germany, 61 years old. He was half of the DAF post-punk group known as DAF stood for Deutsche Amerikanische Freundschaft, German-American friendship. We don't know whether Gabby died of coronavirus. As I say, he died at 61. He was openly bisexual and talked about that a lot, and people in the music community are very upset at his loss.
But somebody who is very much alive is the Polish actor and journalist Witold Sadowy, I guess is the name, Sadowy. He's come out at age 100. I am proud that I am an honest man. I didn't get married. I didn't have children, something I actually regret, but I was born different. I'm gay. Now I have said everything, as in confession. And we have a picture of him also when he was younger. Of course, he's coming out at a time in Poland when anti-LGBT activity is rife. They're creating LGBT-free zones in the right-wing towns. But, you know, there's also a positive...
Not if you read the State Department's Human Rights Report.
Right.
That's missing. In Ireland, another coming-out story, Denis Finnegan, 10-time national track and field champion in the triple jump. He has come out.
I hope just telling my story might help one person notice there's more acceptance out there.
And in Argentina, a basketball pro, Sebastian Vega, age 31, has come out. He talked about how he was very scared to come out, but in part because he had heard a lot of slurs from his teammates for years. But when he came out, they all apologized. And
we formed a very strong bond, he said.
Yes. In South Korea, they're doing something weird with their government. They have one of these coalition governments where they have a large minority party, but it has to get together with other parties to form a majority to rule. So it's the DPK party that has been the leader of the coalition. And they recently decided to change the minority parties they were affiliated with from the more liberal parties that were pro-LGBT to anti-LGBT parties to form their government because they don't want a pro-LGBT coalition partner. So that is what's going on in the government of South Korea.
Discouraging.
Yes.
Good news from the Principality of Andorra, which is set to enact marriage equality. It's a European nation of 80,000 people on the border of France and Spain, and it is expected to take effect in months. We're trying to give you some good news amidst all this other stuff.
Well, I'll give them good news about accidental homosexuality, and that is the new Rainbow Bridge that is opening April 1st in Taiwan as a walkway. Woo! Look at that. It is
scary.
30 stories up. It is more than 1,000 feet long, and it is done in a rainbow sequence. But
I get nervous just looking at
it. It evidently has nothing to do with the gay community. They just have a rainbow pattern. It goes to a great waterfall, evidently, in a beautiful location. So, but you have to pay to walk across it.
Oh.
It's not free.
They got to pay you to walk across it.
Yeah. I want to repeat our phone number for call-ins, which is right now. Call us at 212, right now if you're watching us Wednesday afternoon on Facebook, not if you're watching us at the regular other times. 212-757-1393. 212-757-1393 if you would like to talk to us now about any of this stuff. So, Andy.
I'm wrung out.
Yeah, well, it's scary. I don't, I am medicating my anxiety, and very low dose.
I've been known to have a glass of wine in the afternoon. I know that's not appropriate for some of you.
Well, I don't drink, so I turn to other things, sometimes just an antihistamine. But panic attacks are no fun and not helpful.
No.
And I want to be able to get through this in a sane way. So I say this just to recommend to people, do not become a victim of your fear. Do something about it. Right. There are, call your doctor, do whatever you can, use your home remedies.
Telemed and all those kinds of things.
A lot of people are consuming more alcohol these days, but I say whatever it takes to get through it, as long as you're not endangering yourself. And we have a couple of callers, so let's talk to Travis here and see what he has to say. Hello, Travis.
Hi, nice to speak with you.
And you.
Thanks. I'm actually calling from Portland, Oregon, and I'm a graduate student out here in classical Chinese medicine. And I just wanted to sort of add some awareness that there is a lot of energy right now in the traditional Chinese medicine community, particularly in China, towards fighting the coronavirus. There's some really interesting herbal approaches that have been employed, as well as some acupuncture and cupping that has shown some real progress. And there's even some interesting data coming out of Africa, where China and Africa have a pretty close relationship, and they have some Chinese friendship hospitals throughout the continent there. And even there has been some remarkable progress with fighting the coronavirus.
Well, I know China is very present in Africa in lots of ways, economically, certainly. Can you, and I've heard a lot about people using herbs to maintain health in the face of this. Can you tell us what you would recommend people do to access or investigate this kind of approach?
Sure. Well, you can always contact your local TCM provider. You can just look up who is near you. There's acupuncturists and herbalists really in every major and minor city, and even in like the smaller, more rural towns now. There's also, I can just give you a personal recommendation. A teacher at my school is providing some herbal sort of, I guess you would call it sort of preparation, not treatment for the disease, but to build up your defenses.
Yes.
And so, yeah, there's a lot of options out there.
Well, the more options, the better. As we said, there are 69 drugs being tested for this, and they're trying to develop a vaccine, and they're trying to develop treatments if they can.
Thank you, Travis.
Thank you, Travis.
Thank you for reminding us that we really need to be looking at a wider universe of help.
And now we're going to turn to Bill, who is on the phone. Bill, what's your comment or question?
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
How are you?
That's a familiar Bill. This is our Bill Bowman, associate producer, calling in from home. Thank you for staying home, Bill.
Yeah. I'm glad I did. You're doing a great job. I just wanted to share a couple of quick things.
Sure.
I was able to confirm that the musician Gabby Delgado did die from coronavirus.
Oh, thank you. Sad.
And that bridge, Rainbow Bridge, the cost is actually under $1 to cross.
Oh, okay.
So
well, I feel better
expensive.
then. Yeah. I didn't translate the Taiwanese
NT dollars to US dollars.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I've spoken to some doctors, and, getting rest is important, and, of course, staying at home. And if you have congestion at all, whatever nasal spray you use for congestion you should definitely use, because that'll help you clear the lungs, whether it's coronavirus or whatever it is.
Okay. Thank you. That's good information.
Great.
And how are you, as someone living with HIV, feeling about this, or are you doing anything different?
It's scary. It's scary. It's like, you worry about every little thing, but also like you trying to avoid watching the news too much. Trying to catch up on, binge watching other shows that have nothing to do with the virus and comedies on TCM.
Yep.
All right. Well,
so it all helps.
Thank you for being with us. Thank you all for coming into our first live show since the sodomy laws were overturned in 2003 when we went live.
Congratulations.
And we look forward to being with you every week until this is over and beyond.
One way or another. But please be careful and
you see how
stay
far
safe.
apart we are?
Yes.
And thanks to our crew for coming in today.
Yes, and thank you to everyone who is helping. We'll see you next week.